Welcome back to the Sugar Freedom Kitchen. You know that I'm doing my carnivore zero carb experiment, and so I'm updating you 9 weeks in. I did have a little bit of a slip one day, so I wanted to describe how that can happen and how it feels to get back on carnivore after you've had a slip. What happened was I had a change in my normal routine. Usually I eat 16-8, 16-hour fast, and then 8-hour eating window. I had a work day where I had to be at work at 6 o'clock and that I wasn't leaving until 2, which completely covered the time when I normally have my meals. I thought I was well prepared. I did ground beef patties with cheese. So 2 things happened. When I ate my breakfast, I wasn't really hungry yet, but I went ahead and ate, didn't get satisfied at lunch, and then came back and overate later on in the afternoon. So 3 things happened. Hadn't prepared enough food, didn't have my schedule right, and then came back and did some overeating. There were a couple of things I could have done instead. One of them was I could have prepared more food in the first place. One of the problems that I had was I didn't have enough of my carnivore-friendly food ready, and so I ended up reaching for a lot more cheese and a lot more almonds. Now, almonds, as you know, growing on trees, not on this program, ended up eating them that day because I was just ravenously hungry, which doesn't normally happen on carnivore. Hasn't happened for about 8 weeks. But it did happen because I didn't have enough to eat, and I think that the other problem that I had was the cheese. The cheese that I used was a processed sliced cheese. I mean, it wasn't like processed cheese food. It was a Monterey Jack cheese and had some jalapenos in it. But I do think that sometimes these pre-sliced cheeses, sometimes they can have additives in them that can trigger my appetite. And also didn't quite have enough to get satisfied and wasn't eating at my normal time. So I ended up eating a lot of almonds and a lot of cheese, feeling very bloated and feeling terrible the next day. Joint pain, bloating, probably weight gain, I don't know. I did not get on the scale. The good news was I got right back on track with my meat, eggs, bacon. I did, of course, continue to have my tonic, which is the Rags apple cider vinegar and the lemon juice. One of the problems that lasted for the next 2 days was adding back all of that fiber slowed down my digestion. And then when I got back on carnivore, it speeded things up a little bit too much, if you take my meaning. So the best thing to do is just do your best. If you're making this commitment, just stick to your plan. Oh, and by the way, always check with your doctor first before you make this kind of change in your eating plan. Speaking of eating plans, I wanted to tell you about a little bit of an easy recipe for beef short ribs. One of the realities of eating carnivore is that meat is expensive, especially the meats that I'm looking for that have a little bit more marbling in them. Ribeye, not unusual for it to be $16 a pound. These very meaty and well-marbled short ribs were only $6.99 a pound. The problem with most short rib recipes is that they take too long. You have to brown them first and then you have to slow cook them in the oven. Very often you have to braise them or you have to do them overnight in a crock pot. I just really don't have time for that. So what I discovered is I can take these lovely short ribs, use a sharp knife, and go ahead and cut the meat away from the bone and then saute them in the pan. So I'm going to brown them, medium heat, for about a minute on each side, and then cook them for 5 minutes the same way that you would cook a New York steak. Cook them for about 5 minutes on each side the same way you would cook a New York steak. A little bit pink in the center, nicely browned. The fat is browned on the outside. Really delicious. Salt, pepper, and I do use some garlic powder and some onion powder. Depending on how strict carnivore you are, some folks are only going to eat meat and water. Speaking of which, grab the book. How strict a carnivore are you doing? Well, Stefansson and Anderson, when they did their year-long experiment back in the 1920s, and that's what this book is based on, they only had meat and water. They didn't even have eggs. They didn't have any cream, even though those do come from animals. Just meat and water. This book describes the experience that they had. I am having a little bit of cream in my coffee. I do eat eggs and I do use seasonings. But I do want to talk about, because I fell off the cart and then transitioning into fattier meat. And I want to read you something here. This is Stefansson speaking. My trouble, it will be remembered, had been that at the outset they stuffed me with lean. They gave him too much lean and not enough fat. I found that kind of slows things down digestive-wise. Anderson's difficulty, or at least annoyance, began on the second day after he completed a year on meat, January 25th, 1929, when they asked him to eat all the fat he could, permitting along with it only a tiny bit of lean, about 45 grams per day. There they kept him on the verge of nausea for a week. Stefansson describes Anderson's experience in the book, that he dealt with nausea and digestive issues, kind of similar to what I had when I got back on carnivore after that slip day, when he went very high fat and much lower in lean. Once again, a demonstration. Pay attention to how you react. If it's too lean, digestion slows down. If it's too fatty, sometimes digestion can speed up a little bit too much. So those are some of the perils and pitfalls of carnivore. Benefits, wonderfully controlled, managed appetite. The thing that I love most about going carnivore is that I'm just not hungry. I'm only hungry twice a day, kind of hungry for breakfast and kind of hungry for lunch. And that is it. And then I can get on with my life. Anti-inflammatory, my mood is up, my motivation is up. Joined the choir again, feeling really good about that. So this connection between inflammation and mood, lower the inflammation with the carnivore program, just feeling in a much better mood. One of the things that I discovered was the connection between, I had eczema as a very young child. Some of my first memories of the terrible cases of eczema I used to get in the wintertime. Well, it turns out, and I didn't know this until about 2 weeks ago, that there is a connection between insulin resistance and eczema. And I'm like, wow, wouldn't it have been wonderful if way back when I was 3 and 4 years old, my parents could have known, oh, look, this is what she's breaking out with. Maybe we should watch the sugars and the grains and any of the inflammatory foods that she might be having. It would have been wonderful. But it's amazing to realize how much of this is connected. Mood, weight gain, inflammation, and once again with me, things like eczema. Staying carnivore just keeps my skin happy, keeps my mood happy, keeps my appetite manageable, and it really is, for me, it really is worth it. Going another 3 weeks and then going back onto sugar freedom, because the reality is I would like to get back to eating some above the ground vegetables, eating some salads, eating some vegetables, because I really do enjoy them. But for now, well satisfied, great mood. I hope that you will tune back in next week for another episode from the Sugar Freedom Kitchen. It'll be week 10 on carnivore. Take care, everybody, and do what makes you happy and healthy today.